After 5 years of marriage, my spouse and I decided it was time to hit pause on our hectic routines and indulge in a much-needed getaway. The plan: a couple of weeks at a fancy resort, far from the noise of everyday life. Truth be told, our relationship had started showing cracks, and we were hoping this trip could be the reset button we desperately needed, not just for our minds and bodies, but for our marriage too. Since we didn't have any children and weren't planning on starting a family in the near future, the idea was to focus entirely on ourselves. But oh my God, not everything went according to the script. By the end of the trip, we both agreed to stick to our current lifestyle and postpone discussing having children for another time. However, one thing that stood out during this trip was my wife's deep affection for her parents. It became crystal clear the night before we left. She came home, glowing, with an extravagant bag containing what turned out to be luxury brand watches. It caught me off guard since, as far as I knew, buying expensive gifts wasn't on our pre-vacation checklist. Before I could say anything, she beamed and said it was a present. For me, she claimed. But I wasn't buying it. My skeptical glance must have given me away because she quickly burst into laughter and clarified that it was actually an early anniversary gift for her dad. Her real reason: she wanted to snap some photos and post them on social media before we left. I watched her excitedly rush into the bedroom to set up her little photo shoot, taking endless pictures of the watch from different angles. Before I knew it, she was asking me to like her post, timed precisely for 20 minutes later. As much as I adore Mary, she can be a bit impulsive and, well, a tad superficial. About a year ago, she quit her job to dive headfirst into blogging, and while her follower count has grown, the financial return hasn't quite matched the effort. It feels like her days revolve around posting random updates and obsessing over emojis on every photo we share. Fast forward to the vacation. Instead of relaxing under the sun and unwinding, I found myself on a trip with her social media addiction tagging along. Due to some unexpected expenses, yes, that watch included, we even had to downgrade and give up the hotel room we'd initially booked. Frustrating. Absolutely. But to be honest, I still managed to enjoy the beach, the warm sand, and the beautiful palm trees. Mary, on the other hand, seemed far less impressed. What started as minor disagreements in the evenings escalated into full-blown arguments night after night. Eventually, we hit a point where we just stopped talking altogether. I kept hoping she'd snap out of her mood, but things only went downhill. Then, I started noticing something odd. My wife began disappearing in the evenings. When I asked where she was going, she'd casually say she was hanging out with a friend and heading for a swim at the pool. The thing is, every time she left, she'd wrap herself in a towel. But here's what stood out. I couldn't see the straps of her swimsuit. Something about it didn't sit right with me. What kind of friend had she suddenly made? And swimming, naked, it didn't make sense. One evening, as she left the room again, that towel draped over her shoulders, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. My mind was racing, and curiosity got the better of me. Without wasting a second, I rushed out of the room and headed straight for the pool. There was obviously no one there. After coming to my senses, I decided to take a walk on the private beach. There were usually no people here after sunset. However, there were private villas near the hotel, and their guests sometimes went for a night swim. Walking on their property was forbidden, but as I pondered, I wandered toward the path and heard laughter nearby. I quickly hid, but then I recognized that laughter. It was my wife. I found her in a hammock with another man. They hadn't even bothered to hide inside the villa. My wife froze as the man awkwardly tried to get out of the hammock. He spoke in broken English, but it made no sense. Without thinking, I gave him a kick in the ass, causing him to fall out of the hammock. Climbing to his feet, he tried to grab my wife's towel to cover himself, but ended up dropping it. My wife climbed out of the hammock and chased after her lover, as I assumed she would. However, she picked up the towel, tried to wrap it around herself, and made a grimace. "Dan, it's wet," my wife reprimanded, fixing her hair and looking at me with her head up. "It's not what it looks like." "Come on, tell me an incredible story." "How can it be explained?" "Vincent, I was just joking around trying to play a joke on you. And I succeeded. Nothing serious. I love only you." She gestured toward the private villa. She threw a towel at me, stained by her infidelity, but missed. I spat and turned to walk back to the hotel. "Get me some clothes." Mary shouted curses after me, but I just smiled and kept walking. Unable to resist, I shouted back at her, "Hey everyone, I'm filing for divorce, and the court will award the fairest of them all our property. Knowing you, I'd say the meanest one will win." And with a heavy sigh, I added, "I'll see you in court." In the room, I hastily packed my belongings, fully intending to go register my eviction. But then it struck me. I had already paid for the rest of my stay, and even the plane tickets. Why should I leave? So I approached the receptionist, and after a brief conversation, my double room without meals was transformed into a single room. I also requested that my wife be given the plane ticket, so she could attempt to exchange it for the keys to our apartment. It was stashed away in my purse, ready for my return. After all, I still had a whole week of vacation left. Settling onto the balcony with a refreshing cocktail, I couldn't help but notice some commotion downstairs. Curiosity got the better of me, and I soon found myself witnessing the source of the noise. Half-naked Mary was being escorted out of the hotel by two guards, one holding her hand and the other dragging her suitcase. She was shouting profanities, claiming to be a blogger with a large following who could have advertised for the hotel. But it was all in vain. As she was quickly shoved into a cab and driven off, I couldn't help but think, "Good riddance, Mary." Back at home, the first thing I did was file for divorce. But it never made it to court. My father-in-law intervened, and after a man-to-man talk, we decided to keep things civil and avoid any legal battles. They relinquished any claims to our property, and my father-in-law even offered to return the watch he had gifted us on our anniversary. Of course, I declined. It was a good gift, but it only reminded me of the failure of my first marriage.